In recent decades, the promise of digital freedom has attracted billions of people to major online platforms. Social networks, search engines, and streaming services have become universal showcases of information, accessible, fast, and seemingly democratic. But at some point, almost imperceptibly, that promise began to crumble. Content stopped being displayed according to its relevance and started being shaped by invisible, silent, yet extremely powerful mechanisms. Videos disappeared without explanation. Profiles were silenced. Common terms became triggers for automatic punishments. In the midst of this new scenario, a disturbing question arises, one that may forever change the way you see the internet. Who is really deciding what you can see, and what must be erased from your mind? Welcome to another night where mysteries never sleep. I am Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Before we begin, I'd like to ask for your help. Like the video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's just one click, but it makes a huge difference for YouTube to deliver the videos to more people and for me to keep bringing this content to you. I'm counting on you. Let's get to the video. Open any social network right now. What you see there was chosen for you, but not by chance. There's a system working silently behind the screen, selecting each video, each image, each word. And it does this based on something that seems simple but is anything but innocent: the algorithm. This word, which has become common, carries a power that few truly understand. It's not a neutral tool. It's a structure designed to control. The algorithm has one function only: to keep you connected for as long as possible. To do this, it not only watches what you consume, it learns. Every click, every second of attention, every swipe of your finger feeds a system that begins to predict what will hook you. And what is most effective at hooking someone? Content that provokes, irritates, shocks. Not content that informs. And that's when the gears start turning with intentions that go beyond entertainment. When you open your feed and start scrolling, you believe you're in control. But you're not. In reality, the algorithm has already filtered everything before you saw it. What appears first, what never appears at all, and what is repeated insistently. None of it is random. It's all calculated, and not in the same way for everyone. Each profile receives a different reality. Two users can search for the same term and see opposite results. This happens all the time, and almost no one notices. We're not talking about fiction. In 2021, internal documents leaked by a former Facebook employee revealed that the company itself knew its systems encouraged polarized and even dangerous content. Even so, they chose to keep the algorithm running the same way. Why? Because it increased time spent on the platform. Profit was above safety. And if that happens with sensitive topics, what might be happening with even more delicate matters? This kind of subtle prioritization creates a devastating effect, a silent distortion of reality. When certain topics disappear from your radar, you don't notice what's missing. And when other subjects are pushed repeatedly, you begin to believe they are urgent, even if they're not. Public perception is shaped, little by little, based on decisions no one sees. And who decides what deserves to be seen? Many people think content personalization is a benefit, but it hides a deep problem. The more you interact with one type of information, the more it repeats. And the more it repeats, the more it imposes itself as truth. This is how information bubbles are formed, spaces where there is no opposition, no questioning, only reinforcement. And within these bubbles, any different view seems absurd or even dangerous. But the algorithm doesn't just choose what you like. It chooses what will provoke a reaction. And because of that, moderate, reflective, or balanced content is often ignored. Meanwhile, the extreme, the scandalous, the absurd, those get reach. This was identified in several independent investigations, like the one by the Mozilla Foundation, which revealed that the "Don't recommend this content" button on YouTube was often ignored. Even when certain videos were rejected, they kept coming back. Now think about this on a large scale. Millions of people being exposed to the same patterns, the same suggestions, the same silences. This is not just technology. It's attention manipulation. And where there's manipulation of attention, there's manipulation of behavior. What once seemed like a useful tool becomes a structure of invisible control. And all of it without anyone needing to give a direct order. The system does it on its own. And the most intriguing part is that all of this happens without transparency. Platforms rarely explain how their algorithms work. The rules change all the time, penalties appear out of nowhere, and content creators are constantly walking on eggshells. Which word will kill the reach today? Which topic will be buried in the limbo of the feed? No one knows. And that's not accidental. It's part of the strategy. The algorithm, in the end, is a filter of power. Whoever controls it decides what will be remembered and what will be forgotten. Not through direct censorship, but through a planned absence. A strategic silence. If something doesn't appear for you, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It simply means someone, or something, decided you shouldn't see it. And how do you challenge an absence? This invisible structure that defines what is visible no longer acts only behind the scenes. It is the very stage itself. It controls the script, the actors, and most importantly, the audience. And when you begin to understand the reach of this, a disturbing question arises. If this mechanism can show or hide whatever it wants, what else has it already hidden, without anyone noticing? Imagine content that doesn't violate any explicit rules. No hate speech, no violent images, no dangerous incitement. And yet, upon being published, it simply vanishes. It doesn't show up in searches, it doesn't reach subscribers, it's not recommended to anyone. This happens every day, and the explanation lies in a process increasingly common on major platforms. Silent demonetization, invisible downgrading, the so-called shadow ban. This is how speech is controlled without needing to ban it outright. Terms like pandemic, vaccine, war, or election have come to be treated with a level of sensitivity that borders on the surreal. Creators who dared to address these topics, even responsibly and with proper backing, saw their videos disappear. They received no notifications. They just noticed a sudden drop in views. Silence was the answer. This phenomenon is not theoretical. It has been documented. Leaks like the Facebook papers revealed internal lists of words and topics marked as sensitive or not recommendable. The decision wasn't just automated, but often driven by external pressure, regulatory agencies, companies, governments. Moderation stopped being purely technical and became strategic. On YouTube, creators reported that during the pandemic, merely mentioning the word virus would get their video flagged. Many began to self-censor, swapping words for codes or using slang, in an attempt to bypass automatic moderation. This behavior spread like a new kind of digital dialect, created to survive algorithmic surveillance. But why silence certain terms, even when used neutrally? The answer lies in reputational risk. Platforms fear losing advertisers, facing lawsuits, or becoming embroiled in public controversies. To avoid this, they create internal blacklists of so-called sensitive topics. And these lists are rarely public. The user only discovers that something was penalized when it's already too late. The result is a subtle atmosphere of fear. Creators stop addressing important issues. Independent journalists avoid deep investigations. Debates are suffocated before they even begin. And little by little, online discourse becomes hollow. Not because there's nothing left to say, but because saying something has become a risk. This selection isn't limited to political or health-related content. Even videos with social complaints, reports of abuse, or criticism of large corporations face the same fate. In 2020, an Intercept investigation showed that Facebook automatically blocked posts mentioning partner companies in a negative context. Criticism was automatically deprioritized. The protection wasn't for people, it was for brands. In some cases, the algorithm goes further and applies cascading punishments. One penalized video can affect the performance of an entire channel. This leads creators to delete old videos, completely change the focus of their content, or simply abandon the project. This erosion happens slowly, silently, almost imperceptibly, but it's extremely effective. Platforms like TikTok have been accused of applying invisible filters to hide users deemed unattractive, poor, or disabled. These criteria, documented in internal materials obtained by The Guardian, showed that the algorithm could be used to create an idealized showcase, where only what is aesthetically acceptable receives visibility. It's not just about what you say, it's also about who you are. And all of this is maintained under a simple justification: community protection. This phrase has become the perfect shield for arbitrary decisions. But protect whom exactly? And protect from what? Many times, what's being avoided is not harmful speech, it's the discomfort of facing unpleasant realities. Meanwhile, content that reinforces popular narratives, even when shallow or misleading, continues to be promoted. Dangerous challenges, fake news disguised as opinion, and sensational videos keep circulating freely because they generate engagement. The system isn't moral, it's functional, and when the truth interferes with the machine, it's simply pushed into the dark. At this point, it's hard not to wonder, how many voices have been silenced without the public even noticing? How many reports, investigations, or complaints never reached us, not because they were wrong, but because they were inconvenient? Selective silence is more effective than open censorship. It erases without a trace, and whoever controls that silence controls the narrative. The internet gave people the impression that they were in control. The promise was total freedom. Anyone could publish, anyone could reach the masses. But over time, that freedom was shaped, refined, until it became something that feels free, yet follows an invisible script. And that script is dictated by an algorithm that not only filters what appears, but pushes content with very specific objectives. The most dangerous part? This happens without anyone noticing. Today, it's common to see certain topics suddenly take center stage. Viral challenges, lightning-fast trends, dances repeated to exhaustion. It all seems spontaneous, as if it came from users' own creativity. But a deeper investigation reveals another layer. Many trends are artificially boosted. Platforms like TikTok and Instagram have teams that manually promote content, often for commercial or political interests. And the average user believes it's all organic. This doesn't mean that every trend is manufactured, but the ones that tend to have something in common. They keep the user distracted, engaged, and, above all, away from more sensitive topics. While a dance video reaches millions of views in a matter of hours, a serious report on institutional abuse might get blocked the moment it's published. Entertainment has become a curtain, and those holding that curtain know exactly what they're hiding behind it. The manipulation goes beyond like content. During election periods, for example, platforms are pressured, or willingly cooperate, to favor certain narratives. Reports from the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times revealed that Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube adjusted their algorithms on several occasions to prioritize trustworthy information during political races. But who defines what's trustworthy? And in whose interest? This creates a dangerous distortion. It's not the truest message that spreads, it's the one that best fits the model the algorithm favors. Emotional, simplified, polarized posts. Debate is reduced to extremes, because that's what guarantees clicks, comments, and shares. Meanwhile, any attempt at nuance, depth, reflection is ignored. The platform does not reward balance. And when a platform favors one kind of narrative, it also decides which behavior will be valued. A contrary opinion may not be directly censored, but it will be buried into oblivion. This is evident when comparing the reach of similar videos with different approaches. A more inflammatory video, even with poor quality, far outperforms one that tries to present a balanced argument. This prioritization directly affects public perception. Gradually, what appears most frequently starts to be considered truth, consensus, reality. This is called the mere exposure effect. The human brain tends to believe more in what it sees repeatedly. And the algorithm takes advantage of this, not to inform, but to shape what seems acceptable. Large corporations and governments know this, and they use it. There are records of partnerships between platforms and state agencies to control the visibility of certain topics. In China, for example, TikTok, known there as Douyin, is highly regulated and tailored to promote content that aligns with the official narrative. In the United States, recent reports claimed that the FBI had communicated with Twitter to contain the spread of certain stories during presidential campaigns. But control doesn't always come from above. Influencers also play the game. Many receive direct guidance on what to say, how to say it, or even what to avoid. In return, they get privileged reach. This creates an informal network of propaganda disguised as entertainment. The audience watches, shares, and consumes without realizing they're being guided. Marketing campaigns today don't just sell products. They sell behaviors, ideas, ideologies. A lifestyle promoted incessantly becomes desirable, even if unattainable. And those who don't fit that mold are gradually pushed to the margins, out of focus, out of the algorithm. The system doesn't just deliver what you want, it decides what you should want. And the most unsettling part, all this happens inside a comfortable bubble. The user feels informed, up to date, included. But in reality, they're being carefully led. Modern manipulation doesn't impose by force. It seduces with convenience. And when the viewer realizes they've been manipulated, they no longer know what truly came from their own will and what was planted along the way. How many of the choices we make online are truly ours? And how many were decided by an invisible code disguised as freedom? If behind the screen the algorithm decides what will be seen, there is also a silent struggle over who will control those decisions. It's not a public fight, it doesn't make the news, but it happens every day between governments, corporations, and ideological groups. The stage is invisible, the weapons intangible, and the power at stake is greater than ever, influence over billions of connected minds. Platforms like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok have become geopolitical arenas. Each carries, overtly or covertly, an alliance with certain interests. Behind the scenes, there are deals, pressures, and favors exchanged that directly influence what can be said and what must be buried. The algorithm, in this game, becomes a tool of state and corporate power, and the public a target. In China, this control is institutionalized. Douyin, the local version of TikTok, is a clear example. There, content is strictly monitored. Videos that praise the government or promote values deemed patriotic are prioritized. Meanwhile, criticism, protests, and even sensitive topics like Hong Kong or Taiwan are automatically erased. There is no room for ambiguity, and the model is so effective it's inspiring other countries. In India, the dispute with China led the government to ban dozens of apps, including TikTok, citing national security threats. But that was only the surface. Internally, the Indian government began pressuring platforms like Twitter and Facebook to remove posts that criticized its actions, especially during the pandemic. The censorship wasn't formal, it came through urgent requests backed by vague laws. In the United States, the conflicts are more subtle, but no less aggressive. Recent revelations showed that government agencies like the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security maintained regular contact with social networks to limit the visibility of certain content, especially during elections. These actions, often justified as efforts to combat misinformation, raised suspicions about the political use of algorithmic moderation. This war isn't only between countries. Within the platforms themselves, there are internal ideological disputes. Moderation and engineering teams, made up of professionals with differing political views, influence sensitive decisions. In 2020, a former Facebook employee claimed that there were informal lists of pages to be monitored more strictly, depending on the ideological leaning of the content. What's at stake is not just information. It's the ability to shape behavior on a massive scale. Deciding what will be seen, what will be forgotten, what will be remembered at critical moments like elections, crises, or conflicts, is to hold control over the course of history. And unlike armed wars, this battle leaves no craters. It leaves gaps in collective memory. Many of these moves go unnoticed because they're disguised under the language of protection. Terms like safety, well-being, and community are repeated endlessly to justify actions that, deep down, aim to control the flow of ideas. But who defines what threatens well-being? Who decides what must be removed to protect the community? This structure creates a troubling situation. Different countries use the same mechanisms for different purposes. While one government uses them to silence protests, another may use them to suppress political rivals. The algorithm is flexible, adaptable, moldable, a weapon that can be configured according to the operator's intent. And in the middle of all this is the user, unaware of the war they've been dragged into. Their feed is not just a reflection of their preferences. It's a minefield where every step has been pre-calculated. The ideas they consume, the voices they hear, even the questions they no longer ask, all of it may have been decided at a boardroom table, far from public view. This invisible war is silent, but its consequences are real. They affect elections, spark crises, fuel conflicts. And while the world's attention is focused on what is seen, the true battle takes place in what is unseen. What's being fought over is not just a dispute over information, it's a dispute over reality. It's easy to believe that with a simple search, everything is within reach. That any topic can be explored, that any opinion can be found, that nothing is out of bounds. But that's only how it seems. The truth is, there's a vast gap between what is available and what is visible. And in that gap lies a growing amount of content, people, and ideas that have been erased, not by mistake, but by decision. Hundreds of channels have reported that, overnight, their audience vanished. The videos are still there, but no one sees them anymore. They weren't deleted. They weren't flagged. They simply disappeared from the algorithmic map. This has happened to all kinds of creators, political commentators, independent journalists, doctors, artists, even teachers. The diversity of those affected is what makes it all the more suspicious. In many cases, the reason is never revealed. The creator receives a generic notice, a vague justification, something like violation of community guidelines. But when they try to understand exactly what was violated, they hit a wall. There are no answers, no clear paths for appeal. The punishment is applied and upheld, with no explanation, no judgment, no recourse, as if the mere act of questioning was itself an infraction. Others discover the block only through their stats. Audience drops, reach disappears, comments vanish. And when followers try to access the channel, they realize they're no longer receiving notifications. In some cases, the content doesn't even appear in search results anymore. It's as if the channel still exists, but only for the creator. To the rest of the world, it has been erased. This kind of concealment has created what many call the hidden zone of the internet, a space where voices continue to create, but are ignored by the system. There are no signs saying entry forbidden. There is only silence. It's a digital limbo where uncomfortable things are placed, things that are not meant to be openly banned, but also not truly allowed, just enough to maintain the appearance of freedom. Many of these creators have tried to migrate to other platforms, but the problem is bigger. The reach they built was based on systems that now reject them. When you switch networks, you start from scratch. And even in alternative spaces, many report similar restrictions, especially when those platforms still depend on major companies for hosting, distribution, or monetization. The web of control is wide, and often invisible until you try to escape it. The official showcase of the internet only displays what has been authorized to be there. But there is a hidden world of excluded, removed, buried content. Reports that vanished, interviews that were deleted, exposés archived for violating guidelines. And the most disturbing part, many of these pieces of information were legitimate. They just went against a dominant narrative or raised an inconvenient question. When we look back, we realize that topics now openly discussed were once forbidden to mention. Certain medical treatments, for example, were labeled misinformation during the pandemic and later turned out to be safe in specific contexts. But the videos that mentioned them had already been deleted, the channels punished, the warnings issued. Who takes responsibility for that kind of mistake? And if it happened before, why wouldn't it happen again? How much useful, valuable, even urgent information is being buried right now by algorithms that don't explain their decisions? Who ensures that what appears in your feed is the best, the truest, the most important? And who is making that decision for you? This divide between what can be shown and what must be hidden creates a system where truth is filtered, and where the very idea of questioning becomes suspicious. You're not forbidden from asking, but the answer is hidden. You're not openly censored, but it becomes impossible to be heard. And that is perhaps more effective than any declared censorship, because in the end, what doesn't reach you simply ceases to exist. Our perception of reality is formed by what we know, and if part of that reality is concealed, even without deleting a single line, then what we experience is a carefully constructed illusion, a limited version of the world made to fit inside the algorithm. If so much is being hidden, how much of the truth do we really have access to? After all this, a question begins to form, and it's not a comfortable one. If the content we consume is filtered, if what reaches us has already been decided, if what could challenge us is buried, then what remains of spontaneity in our choices? How much of what we think, believe, or desire truly came from us? Or have we, without realizing it, been programmed? We're not talking about direct control, like in a dystopian novel where someone issues orders from behind the curtain. The reality is more subtle and more effective. Modern manipulation doesn't impose by force. It infiltrates. It disguises itself as convenience, as recommendation, as personalization. And over time, people begin to confuse what was suggested with what was desired. The human brain is adaptable. That's what makes it so powerful and so vulnerable. It learns through repetition, through association. And the algorithm has learned to exploit this with surgical precision. By reinforcing certain thought patterns, certain emotions, and types of content, it shapes what seems acceptable, normal, true. and all of it without appearing forced. Imagine a user who begins watching videos about healthy eating. Gradually, they're guided to content about extreme diets, then prolonged fasting, then weight loss challenges. The line between interest and obsession is crossed quietly, and the system that feeds this path sees no problem because the person keeps watching. It's engagement, and for the algorithm, that's enough. The same logic repeats with politics, religion, lifestyle. In just a few clicks, a curious young person may find themselves immersed in extremist speeches, radical worldviews, theories presented as absolute truth. And the most dangerous part? It all feels natural, like it was discovered by chance, the result of a legitimate search. But it was carefully delivered, step by step, by a mechanism that knows every weak point of human behavior. That doesn't mean we're digital zombies, but it does mean we're more exposed than we think. Free will still exists, but it is tested every day by systems that know our reactions better than we do, and that, little by little, build invisible tracks that limit our possibilities. Most people don't even notice they've entered these tracks, because everything feels comfortable, coherent, even pleasant. But comfort can also be a prison. When we stop being challenged, when everything around us agrees with us, when doubt disappears, that's when the algorithm has won. It doesn't need to impose. It just needs to make us believe we decided on our own. And the more the system learns, the more efficient it becomes. There are already algorithms capable of predicting emotions based on facial expressions, typing patterns, and even navigation pauses. Companies invest millions to refine these mechanisms, not to understand the human being, but to anticipate decisions. Because whoever anticipates influences, and whoever influences controls. Technology moves forward, but the question remains, is it at our service or are we at its service? The line is thin, and while the feeds keep scrolling, while the videos pile up, while the safest topics are the ones most displayed, that line keeps being crossed inch by inch. That's why questioning becomes urgent. It's not enough to use social networks responsibly. We must understand how they work, who decides what will be seen, what will be ignored, what will be amplified, and above all, for what purpose. Because in the end, if content is shaped, if perception is guided, if desires are stimulated, then thought can also be programmed. And if that's happening now, without anyone noticing, maybe the freedom we think we have is already just a well-packaged illusion. The greatest illusion of the digital age wasn't convincing us that we have freedom. It was making us stop asking whether we still have a choice. Control today doesn't come with bars or overt censorship, but with silent, invisible, and precise curation. What we see, what we believe, even what we feel, may be carefully molded by lines of code written to keep us captive and satisfied. The perfect prison has no doors. It's too comfortable for us to want to leave. This story is just one piece, and someday, maybe you'll see the entire puzzle. If this made you think too, subscribe, like the video. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share. After all, more voices mean more discoveries.